Greetings and salutations. Welcome to the Dsgb Fantasy Football League Weekly Recap. I'm your host and commissioner, AST1. Before we get started, if you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button and follow me if you like content like this. Let's not waste any more time and let's get into the recap. Let's start this week by congratulating the 1972 undefeated Miami Dolphins football team. The last two teams in the league that were undefeated fell to their respective opponents. The Browns defeated the 49ers 19-17, and the New York Jets defeated the Philadelphia Eagles with an outstanding defensive performance 20-14. Imagine what that team could do with A-Rod behind the helm. Now let's go over my commissioner notes, which are the things I noticed over the weekend. Parity in the league. It doesn't matter how fast a team starts out the gate. What matters is how a team plays at the year's end. That couldn't be more evident in fantasy, where NY Giants and Menace to the League came out the gate looking like the two best teams in the league. But from a player's matchups to players getting injured during the game has a special way of balancing throughout the year. Which brings me to another thing I noticed over the weekend: the special teams and kickers. The games in the league come down to literally inches. Whether you win by 10 or by 1 point, a win is a win, and sometimes kickers come through in the clutch. Kansas City Chiefs kicker Harrison Butker kicked the week off on Thursday Night Football, kicking 4 for 4 on-field goals. Butker also kicked a 60-yard field goal before halftime and was the main reason the Chiefs won 19-8 against the Let's Ride Broncos. Next, we have Los Angeles kicker Brett Maher, who was 4 for 4 on field goals, giving his team 16 of the 26 points during Sunday's 26-9 victory against the Cardinals. And finally, we have the best kicker in the league, and arguably in history: Baltimore Ravens kicker Justin Tucker. Tucker was his usual self, 6 for 6 on field goals, and was a huge reason the Ravens beat the Titans 24-16. Moving right along, let's look at the top 5 performers from Week 6 in fantasy. Number 5, we have Alabama Crimson Tide product, quarterback Tua Tagovailoa. Tua, like some of his teammates, are a frequent guest on this list. Tua had a modest yet efficient day for 262 yards on 21 of 31 for 3 touchdowns. Tua had 28 fantasy points on the day. Number 4, we have University of West Alabama wide receiver the Cheetah Tyreek Hill. Hill, who was also on this list in Week 1, had an impressive outing with 10 targets for 6 receptions for 163 yards and 1 touchdown. Tyreek torched the Carolina Panthers all day with his big playability. Hill had 28.3 fantasy points on the day. Number 3 was the Minnesota State Mavericks product, wide receiver Adam Thielen. Thielen, the savvy vet, put on a display with 11 receptions on 13 targets for 115 yards and 1 touchdown on the day. Thielen had 28.5 fantasy points on the day. Number 2 was the USC Trojans product, wide receiver Amon-Ra St. Brown. Brown showed why he is one of the best young receivers in the game, with 12 receptions on 15 targets for 124 yards and 1 touchdown. Brown had 30.4 fantasy points on the day. And number 1 is Purdue Boilermakers product, running back Raheem Mostert. Mostert, who was on this list in Week 3, continued to show his lightning-quick abilities on Sunday. Mostert had 115 yards on 17 carries with 2 touchdowns. He also had 3 receptions for 17 yards and 1 receiving touchdown. Mostert had 34.2 fantasy points on the day. Now let's give a shout-out to the Miami Dolphins fans, who upped the ante from Week 1 by having not 1, not 2, but 3 players to make the top 5 fantasy football performers list for Week 6. Moving right along, let's look ahead at the upcoming Week 7 matchups. First, we have the battle between Hancock County, Georgia versus Bristol Vikings. Both teams are 3-3. Both teams started the season off very differently. Both teams also seem to be getting into a groove. More so with Bristol Vikings, who have picked up victories over the NY Giants and Crimson Ballers over the last 2 weeks. Bristol will look to continue the trend against Hancock County, who was on a 3-game losing streak until Week 6 against a tough Z-Boys, who at the time was riding a 2-game winning streak. Hancock County ultimately got the win against Z-Boys with a total team effort. We will see how these two teams perform on Sunday. Next, we have the 3-3 NY Giants versus the 2-4 Crimson Ballers. NY Giants started out the gate like a scene from 300, but over the last 3 weeks, New York Giants has hit a bit of a snag. With losses from Summertime, Bristol Vikings, and Dream Team Redemption, NY Giants is still leading the league in scoring despite the losing streak. He will look to right the ship against the Crimson Ballers, who, after his league-high score in Week 4, has dropped the last 2 games against Z-Boys and Bristol Vikings. Should be a great matchup with both teams being in the top 5 in scoring points. Up next, we have the reigning champion and current #1 team in the standings, the 5-1 football team versus the 3-3 Dream Team Redemption. The football team in Week 5 suffered his first loss of the season against the Apocalypse, but bounced back in Week 6 against the former 2-time champion Summertime. The football team will look to remain atop the standings against Dream Team Redemption, who bounced back from a loss against Summertime in Week 5. Dream Team ultimately bounced back against NY Giants in Week 6. This should be an exciting matchup as well, since both teams are top 5 in the league in scoring points. Next, we have the 4-2 menace to the league versus the former 2-time champion, with a 3-3 record, Summertime. Menace to the league since his London trip has dropped his last 2 games to former 3-time champion Team Harding and the Apocalypse. Menace will look to right the ship against the former 2-time champion, Summertime. However, Menace may be without his MVP thus far, running back Christian McCaffrey, and wide receiver Deebo Samuel. On the flip side, we have Summertime, who was on a 2-game winning streak until he ran into the football team in Week 6. Summer will look to take advantage of injuries on Menace's team, but he also will be missing some key pieces due to their bye week or injuries. Moving right along, we have the former 3-time champion Team Harding, who is 2-4 versus the 3-3 Z-Boys. Team Harding started out the gate on a 4-game losing streak. Team Harding seems to have righted the ship over the last 2 weeks with wins over Menace to the league and Team Untouchables. Team Harding will continue to look for Cooper Kupp and Jamar Chase's production to continue his current winning streak, with Z-Boys looking to bounce back against a tough loss against Hancock County, Georgia. Z-Boys before Week 6 had a 2-game winning streak over Bristol Vikings and Crimson Ballers. Z-Boys will need better production from quarterback Josh Allen to have a chance. Finally, we have the 1-5 Team Untouchables versus the 4-2 The Apocalypse. Team Untouchables got his first win of the season in Week 5 against Hancock County, Georgia, in impressive fashion. However, he couldn't string together back-to-back wins and fell to Team Harding. Team Untouchables will look for more consistent production from his starting lineup, where only 2 of the 9 starters reached double-digit points. However, on the other side, the Apocalypse has slowly knocked off the 2 top teams in the last 2 weeks with the football team in Week 5 and Menace to the league in Week 6. You could argue his latest win was due to McCaffrey and Deebo leaving the game early, but in fantasy, luck plays a factor in these wins just as much as it is skills. Hit the thumbs up button if you enjoy this content. Comment below who you think will win their matchup this week. Until next time, AST1 signing off.